Hola, bon dia. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show from expatsportugal.com. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, Mrs. M's been in here. First, I had the wrong headphones, and my green screen wasn't down, and now my microphone level was all over the place. How's everyone doing? I'll stop moaning, shall I? A bit of a strange atmosphere in the air. I've got myself... yesterday, I don't know if you saw our political debate. That was interesting, wasn't it? Some excellent comments and feedback on the YouTube channel. And of course, I will be getting in a left-leaning analyst and correspondent to perhaps balance things up. But nonetheless, let's be fair. Miguel, I think, put forward a very interesting view of Portuguese politics yesterday. That was fantastic. But soon after that, was it a political sort of eggy day on social media? This thing that pops up from time to time. And I responded to it with a yawning gif, I have to say. I was in my own way a little bit warlike on social media. You know, some days it just kind of gets to you and you can't help but fire off a gif or two, hopefully keeping a bit of a tongue in your cheek. And the question of expat or immigrant is around again. It never goes away, really, does it? But then, you know, every now and then, I think it kind of catches an eggy political drift, and it becomes a focal point of people nailing their political colours to their mask and saying how they feel about things, you know, in terms of migration, immigration, foreigners, immigrants, expats, etc. So I put a poll up on our YouTube channel, our YouTube community, asking the question, what's your preference? And in brackets, oh yes, this debate isn't going away. Anyway, renaming our channel to Immigrants Portugal or Foreigners Portugal just doesn't have the same ring to it. And it'll cost a fortune in rebranding. How do I break that news to Jerry? Expats have it at 65%, immigrants 35%. And I forgot to add I don't really care category, which I suspect a lot of people would have put themselves in. Expat feels better, says Mark in Australia, but immigrant is honest because it is consistent with how everyone considers new arrivals in their own country. And fair enough. You know, I'm not that strongly attached to it. I'm really not. I suppose if there's anything I'm strongly attached to in it, it's like, why are people so upset about it? That's what I'm interested in. And you know me, I don't think people shouldn't be upset. I would like to talk to them about why they might be upset about it. And also the other thing, same for all of us, who likes being made wrong, you know, because you choose to call yourself something. I'm not sure that it entitles other people to make you wrong, although you can't stop people making you wrong. But that's where the trouble starts, isn't it? If we can't have a respectful conversation about it and look for the nuance and the grey area rather than just straight up name calling and, you know, the usual place, or not the usual, but the often place it can go to on social media. You're an idiot. So none of that here this morning, but very interested to know what you think about expat or immigrant. And that may well be my first question after we've had a look at a few of your hellos for my guest today. Herodius Maximus, that famous Lisboeta gladiator, is back in the ring this morning. Michael Heron, of course, is joining me this morning for Ask Anything About Portugal. I'm sure he'll have something wise to say about expat or immigrant. So before we bring him in, it's a bon dia from sunny Povoa de Varzim. I think it's sunny all across Portugal, isn't it, right now? And that was the phone making a noise. If you want to come through on the phone to ask anything about Portugal, let me just put that on the screen because that could be interesting. Send a voice message, preferably, so I don't have too many things to manage on this day that is Ask Anything About Portugal. Hump Day, Wednesday, here on the Good Morning Portugal show. Hola a todos, bon dia alegria de la ria from the doc. Who is also a Wednesday resident from a medical angle, but also from his point of view as a migrant, immigrant, expat. Maybe I have to say all of them. Hello, beautiful people of Portugal. I hope all is improving. That's another question I've got for Michael. He is in the Lisbon area, And I think things have suddenly changed, shifted a gear socially. It's a different world out there. Bon dia from Oregon, from Jones. I'm going to call you Jones rather than all the numbers there. Jonesy. Greetings from Harrogate, getting warmer, up to -1 in Yorkshire this morning. Bon dia, alegria. For Good Morning, Paul. Good morning to you, Milda. It is Norway, isn't it? And rather than Finland, as I have been mistaking you. Bon dia from Joel Matosinos this morning. And bon dia from Italia, from Bellabine. What a lovely name, Bellabine. Ciao bella. Bon dia, just awake, but I will follow your program today. Edmundo. Oh, yeah, must have done a late one. Taxi man Edmundo. We will get him on one of these days. Don't you worry about that. Nos somos inmigrantes. Okay, extranjeros. For the doc there, he's happy with that. I suspected he might say that. I'm curious about what about in Portugal. Well, Edmundo, you're Portuguese. We're looking to you for guidance here, but you may be. This is a good opportunity to turn the tables. If you want to try and understand the expat immigrant mind from various countries you see represented here, ask away. Why not? Mark Rigby, semi-refugee from Brexit, a refugee, I think that's known as. There are a number of people identifying themselves on census forms as refugees now. Bon dia from Hawaii. Wow, what a lovely crowd and a far-flung crowd we have. Good morning to you, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. Gemini's here. Hi, Gemini. How are you? No, keep the same name brand. Yes. Estrangeros Portugal from Helen there. How's Thailand this morning? Let me see. I'm just leaping around in the comments here. So many lovely good mornings. I think we had a slow start to the week, but everyone seems to be back under the mother hen wing of the Good Morning Portugal show. Morning from Sean Maguire. Sean, yes. Excellent. I hope you're well. Yes, what's inside? What's the offering and serving? It's what's inside, of course. Yes, and that's what comes out in creating community rather than throwing sticks and stones at each other from behind the safety of social media. Louise Ross, my guest tomorrow, a writer, fabulous writer. We're going to have a lovely conversation with Louise tomorrow morning. The current definition is expat, someone living in a country other than their home country with the intention of sooner or later returning, in contrast to immigrant intending a permanent move. Yes, totally understand that. Yeah, and that's where the confusion lies, I guess, isn't it? Is that they have become interchangeable for some people. But thank you. As a writer, I would expect that erudite and stricter definition there. Thank you, Louise. Bon dia alegria from Cabanas de Tavira, from a very happy immigrant. Yeah. Ginny Austin, bon dia from San Martino de Porto. And lovely to have your company this morning, Ginny. Husband Terence joins us next Monday, and you'll love this. If you're selling property, especially your own, a guide to property photography from an expert. Terence will be joining us. How to take great photos of your property, because some people, it would appear, need a bit of help with that in Portugal. Bon dia todos from Porto this morning, from Susan. Good morning. How's Porto this morning, Susan? Hi there, Michael. We'll be with you in just a minute. Sorry, mate. Hi. How can one attend a public Portugal school? Can I live outside of Lagos and still be eligible to go to public school? Yes. That is my understanding. That as a resident, you are eligible, or your children are. Yes, adults can't just turn up and go to school. That would be weird. You might stand out a bit. But Alex, yeah, I'm guessing you're asking about your kids. I've noticed that other people have had no problem of that kind with getting their kids into local school. Good morning, people. Having a relaxed morning, potting on my tomatoes. Okay, excellently. That's got my imagination going. I imagine you're going to have a lovely day. Head gardener McGrady there, who joins us on a Monday with the gardener's Q&A. But there he is, lovely vision of him potting on his tomatoes. Bon dia from Doreen. When I was living in Amsterdam, I considered myself a US expat and a Netherlander immigrant, hoping to be a US expat again and a PT immigrant soon. Yeah, and this is the thing. Call yourself what you wish. Hi, Carl. It was so nice to sit at a table and chairs yesterday outside a cafe, taking in the moment. Gosh, I missed that. Same here. We've done that this week, and we'll do it again today. And I actually have to bring Michael on. I can't read all these comments and leave him in the green room. Let's go through them with Michael, of course. Michael Heron, how are you?
Bon dia, alegria. I'm very well. How are you?
Bon dia, alegria, igualmente. Muito bom, obrigado. Yes, and here you are, the triumphant Michael Heron, last time we saw you on the screen, you were beating off two other men, one from the north of Portugal, the other the Alentejo, and you were victorious. The Lisboetas had it.
Yeah, it was really good, wasn't it? It was very competitive and lovely to see three different, well, immigrants, I guess we all are now, I suppose expats, representing their different regions in Portugal. And it just shows how diverse the country is, because there was no clear winner. And you'd think Lisbon would be the obvious choice, but actually it just goes to show there's so many different types of lifestyle available in the country. Yeah. And I think that's what's so attractive, right, to everyone that's moved here or thinking about moving here, is that you have so many different options.
And that was the problem, wasn't it? The first problem was judging it, because you all did so well. Mark's here this morning, who represented the North so brilliantly. The underestimated, I think, North, to be fair. Yeah. So that was the first problem, was how to judge it. And we had to have a winner to face Jerry, who's representing Central Portugal later this month. So you'll be back on and doing that. But the idea of the whole competition is to help people narrow down their search. And we didn't do that, did we? We just opened their eyes to more glorious parts of Portugal. So sorry, everybody. That's what happened, as it turned out.
Yes, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having more choices, is there? But you're right. And well, I mean, for me, the best part of the whole thing was seeing you in a bow tie.
Yes, a little more casual this morning, but yeah, that bow tie will be back on again. It's around here somewhere, it's laying around the office somewhere. But yes, that will be back on, and I'm looking for a clean fight. But I don't know. It's kind of the expectations, the anxiety, all of those things are rising as we go into the final to see who will be triumphant. And I'm sure Jerry's on a very strict training schedule. What is there anything coming from your camp about how you're preparing for this? The final, not the final countdown, but the final bout to be victorious here.
Well, I can't reveal any of my strategy. No. There's a box that allow the cameras in during sparring.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Silly
I'm going to keep that close to my chest. But I'm going to do something a bit different to sell the region that I live in.
Oh, I see. That's a nice little bit of a psychological angle on there. I'm going to do something a bit different. Not going to say what it is. Yeah, Jerry.
I'll get in the guy's head, right? So if he's watching this, then yeah, I'm coming for you, Jerry.
I'm coming for you. Okay. And Debbie made this excellent comment here. Sitting at a table and chairs. Who would have ever thought that we would miss that it would be such a big thing when you finally got to do it again? But I know exactly what she's talking about. Have you experienced the same? And how is life returning to whatever is the new future, the old normal, the new normal, the new awakening, the great reset, whatever it's called? How's it looking in Lisbon right now?
Yeah, it feels that way. I guess there's still a bit of a hesitancy to go back to normal, because the fear that we're not out of the woods yet, and still only 10% of the population have been vaccinated, so we still have to be a bit careful. But yeah, I mean, it feels great. Don't get me wrong, it feels great to see, especially a lot more of the kids back at school. In fact, I have a school opposite our sort of backyard, and I can actually hear the kids playing now. And that's a beautiful sound. A sound that before may have grated on me sometimes, not going to lie. But this morning it sounds wonderful. So yeah, it's really, really great to see that. And obviously being able to sit outside in a cafe and have a coffee in the morning, that's just indescribable. So yeah, it feels like we're getting back on track, and that can only be a good thing.
Do you get the feeling that people are just saying, okay, that's it, back to normal? I get that sense. I mean, I'm hesitant like you, and I'm aware of, there are still things that we've been asked to do that we should honour. But I do get the feeling other people have just thought, okay, well, that's it. The door's open again. The green light's on. Let's go. Is that the same where you are?
I don't know. I mean, the thing about Portugal, and again, I can only speak from my area of the country, but I'm pretty sure this is something that happens everywhere, is that, I see everyone wearing masks when they step outside. Everyone complies with the rules. And I think that, even though it may be, seen as unnecessary by some people, sort of a means of control or what have you, I think we've all got used to it, And that to me shows that people are still, taking it seriously, which is important until we've got through this final stage of it, hopefully. But the impression I get, I just compare it with the UK, and I know that I see images on the news, and they're obviously maybe sometimes exaggerated, but you see, big groups of people in parks, on the beach, no one wearing a mask, no one socially distancing, and you just do wonder whether it's just another recipe for a disaster to happen. And obviously, I'm very protective of Portugal now, and we need that tourism to come in this summer, and I just don't want anyone to jeopardize that. So I get very angry when I see people not complying with, what are pretty, basic restrictions now. I mean, it's just wearing a mask when you're out. You can take it off as soon as you sit at your table. So let's see. I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I'm hoping that we'll have a good summer anyway, and then maybe we brace ourselves for a fourth wave in the winter. But let's see what happens.
Well, okay, yes, well said. And going back to the questions, that's what it's all about this morning. Michael is here, as he says there, defensive and a lover of Portugal, of mixed heritage. I mean, you're from the UK, but half Argentinian.
From Norwich, born in Norwich, where it was snowing yesterday, believe it or not.
Snow in Norwich.
Which is unbelievable.
Incredible. A man of the world as well. He's travelled well, and he represents Portugal and is a consultant about some matters of Portuguese life, particularly in the legal profession. He knows his onions, does this man, and that's why we have him here once a month now. His senoras, he knows them well, and so he's here to help me answer the questions on Ask Anything About Portugal Day, Wednesday. And this was the first question that came in, and I was a little glib, I think, so let's go back to it. Sorry, Alex, for my earlier question, my earlier response to your question. How can one attend a public school in Portugal? And by that, I mean, that's a bit of a confusing thing from the get-go, isn't it? Because public school means something different in the UK, and we're not talking about the likes of Eton and Harrow, are we? We're talking about the public school system in Portugal. Fairly straightforward matter, I think, Michael, isn't it?
Yeah, providing you're a resident and your parents are residents, then it's straightforward. You just have to be aware, I think, that you have to start the process early, because it can sometimes take a bit of time to be enrolled in the system. And unless you're homeschooling, then it's from the age of 6. Legally, they have to be enrolled in the system. So yeah, it's pretty simple though.
Straightforward. There you go, Alex. A better answer than mine that came in. Let's keep looking at your comments and see if we find some questions in there. I think a lot of people just catching up this morning. Bon dia from Alicante this morning. Oh, that's a bit different than it. Yes, a ruffle there from Alicante here on the Good Morning Portugal show. Bon dia from the Azores, from Donna, from one of the autonomous regions. How's it over there at the moment? I bet you're getting some nice weather now, Donna. It's always a pleasure interacting with you sometimes, says Marcos Schwab. It's always good to see your name on the screen, Marcos. Obviously a great fan of Portugal and singing the praises often of wine and food here in Portugal, and why not? Ludwig Dingeldine is here. Good morning to you, Ludwig. Martin Jeffs, bon dia from Lisboa, one of your neighbours there, metaphorically, Michael. Bon dia from Mike Campion. Still snowing. Need some sun. You so do. I need a Good Morning Portugal cam, I think, that I can switch to during the show to share a bit of sunshine with you. Not rubbing it in, Mike, just saying. Bon dia from Moscow. What's the weather like there at this time of year? From Caroline. Good morning to you, Caroline. I forgot to say hello, everyone here. Bon dia todos from Marcos there, putting that right. Gary Austin's here on YouTube. Bon dia from the prisoner. Now, sometimes you can tell, can't you, when somebody normally watches on Facebook and then suddenly they're next day watching on YouTube, what he's referring to there. And I think it must have been a slightly eggy day on social media, because Gary got himself banned. I mean, I don't think I'm betraying any confidences there, and that's what the prisoner referenced. He is on Facebook. He's on Facebook's naughty step. I think maybe replying to the expat immigrant foreigner thing. I'll ask you in just a moment about that, Michael. So Gary, you're a very naughty boy. You call it foreigners in Portugal. The FIP, Paul. Yeah, but who's going to break that news to Jerry? A massive rebranding exercise. I mean, part of why we're called Expats Portugal is because it was named in 2005. When the world, there was a different world in 2005, wasn't it? Old money, escudos. Only kidding. But you know, people weren't so. Is the word touchy? I don't know. Just saying touchy might cause other people to be touchy now. But I'm not touchy. I'm just, but anyway, let's see what happens with that. But yes, it was named when it was originally founded by Simon in 2005. So there's a little bit of a clue. It's Thai New Year next week, and it seems the famous Songkran water parties are perhaps cancelled. It's best if you make it to the beach. So I don't know what that is. But I mean, to be in Thailand in festival time, notwithstanding how one's movements might be restricted, I'm sure would be very lovely, Helen. And I hope you managed to celebrate that festival there. Have you been to Thailand, Michael?
No, I would love to go.
Yeah, I've been a couple of times. Absolutely beautiful country, lovely people. Suzanne Cosola, bon dia, snowing here. Where are you?
Around that, it's insane, isn't it?
Send us pictures. Please send pictures of snow so that Michael and I can show the pictures to our kids of what snow looks like. Because that's right for my kids. Thanks, mate. Yeah, okay. Glad we cleared that up. Although, we could have a school for adults, certainly for learning Portuguese and culture, and I think we do our bit here to do that. Philomena's here on Friday, of course. The school mom, Philomena. Our biggest constraint in schooling for our 5 and 7 year olds. We've been looking at international schools following the Cambridge curriculum. Would welcome other possibilities. Do you know about the new one in the Parque de Nações? There's a new international school in Lisbon, there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's new ones cropping up all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm going through that process at the moment with my eldest, who's 5. He's going to turn 5 later this month, and I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it, but if someone's asked, then maybe I can share a bit of insight. I think, every school is very different. The culture of every school is very different, and I think it's important to find the right school for your children.
Yes.
And fair enough if you want to find an international school that follows, so they can do GCSEs and A levels. Fair enough. But what I would maybe say is that the international schools can be extremely expensive. And if you do want to send your child to a private school, then you can also consider Portuguese private schools, where they'll get perhaps more care and attention than a Portuguese non-private school, depending on the area where you're in, because much like the UK, there's a big variation, right, depending on the catchment area that you live in.
Yes.
The reputation the school may have. But the Portuguese private schools tend to be cheaper than the international ones. And I think then you get a more genuine local experience for your children. Otherwise, there's a danger they could just end up living in an expat bubble, which, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. Every parent has their own kind of view on it. And maybe the old the historic reason why international schools were first founded in Portugal was probably to cater for the expat community. That old-fashioned assignee that would be sent from their home country to probably only stay here for a few years. And I think one of your audience was referring to that dictionary definition, which is exactly that, which is where it comes from originally, I think, as opposed to an immigrant or somebody who moves here permanently. Yeah. So you have to kind of understand where these schools originated from. So obviously, if you're only coming here for a few years on assignment, then it makes sense. You send your children to an international school; they keep up with the UK curriculum. They go back, and then they haven't lost any of their momentum. But if you're planning to live here permanently, then you may want to consider a Portuguese school, either public or private, because here there are public universities. So it's not going to cost you or your children the cost of going to, university in the UK or the US, indeed, which, in my understanding, the top universities in the US can cost, around $50,000 a year. And another trend I'm seeing, and this isn't necessarily foreigners from Germany, but a lot of people send their children to the German schools because they're very good. They don't tend to be as expensive as the other international schools. And in Germany, you have a lot of wonderful universities that are all free as well. So I know it sounds a bit perverse to kind of try and map out your children's future. Not all children are going to end up in higher education and whatnot, but there are things to consider, and you shouldn't necessarily rule out Portuguese schools, as some of them are very good and some of the private ones are excellent.
Very good, very interesting, and that's why we have Michael here with responses like that. So I hope that helps, Mike. And that's a new angle on it. I hadn't thought of that. Portuguese private or private Portuguese schools, very interesting. And yes, thinking about the forward trajectory of your child, of course. If you're employed by a corporation or the military or a big organization that's going to move you around the world, then it may be that the international school helps with continuity.
Exactly.
But yeah, the other thing I'd add is that if this is a serious consideration and you're not just going to be sending your kids to the nearest local school, your choice of house and location is going to be very important, because it's not as if every city and town in Portugal has an international school. So you need to be mindful of that and probably stick to the bigger conurbations, I would say. Good morning from a very sunny Tomar from Maria Costa, part of our Expats Portugal, Ask Our Expats team. And yeah, the other thing about that, sorry, just going back to schools briefly, I've put the link to our site, expatsportugal.com. That's the link to become a premium member, which I urge you to do. But there you'll find our forum, and then you can ask people. That's where you'll get the on-the-ground info from people who are educating their kids. We've got 8,000 members there, and there will be people there who have or are educating their kids.
The other thing I just wanted to say very quickly, and this has been my experience of sort of researching schools, is I would always be a little bit wary of a new school. And again, this was my own experience with my son, who's 24. I get the impression with a lot of the newer international schools, all they care about is, can you afford the fees? And they don't really focus on the child. Whereas with my son, he's going to go to a Portuguese school in September, and he actually had to do an interview over video and was given a series of fun tasks to do.
Amazing.
His level, and it was really fun. It was really great, and I loved that because the admissions lady made it all about him. And it was like parents are secondary. Yeah, so these are little cues you can pick up on when you're going through the process. And I know it's harder in COVID times because it's difficult to visit the schools at the moment. But yeah, I would just urge on the side of caution for a brand new school, because don't forget, it's a business. And you want to look at track records always with any business, right? And if it's just started, then you don't really know what the academic performance of the children has been up until that point. Not that that should be the only consideration, of course, but that's why I'd always just urge on the side of caution if it's a new school. Yeah.
No, you make a good point. I mean, in back in the old days when I was my mother, who took a Chinese woman, and Chinese families take education very seriously. She was trying to get me into various schools, and I was a very average student, I have to say. Didn't like school, not particularly brilliant academically. And one school, sorry, your son hasn't passed the. This is a school actually in Bristol where they was wearing capes and garters and stuff like that, and probably even mortar boards. This isn't that long ago, but it was a precursor to Harry Potter or Dickens or something. I mean, it's a really old-fashioned place. Didn't pass the entrance exam, but was allowed in if I paid, which gives you some. I think that backs up what you're saying there. He's not bright enough to get in of his own skills, but if you're willing to pay, well, I suppose we'll accept him. So yeah, I think you make a very excellent point there, Maria. Yeah, very sunny Tamar. That's going to be hot, isn't it? Tamar, known for these occasional 40 degrees. I don't think it'll get that high today, but if you're looking for central Portugal and warmth, you couldn't go better than Tamar, in my view. Good morning to you, Maria. And Thomas, this is great. Thomas is a learned fellow. I suspect did much better at school than I did. Good morning. People may have seen this piece on the BBC some time ago. Who should be called an expat? The BBC view on it there. That's just about as close to the Queen's decision on it as you're going to get. We're going
there already. Amazing. We're going.
The Queen.
He can't help himself.
The village of Kosher has come back to life. So this is what I'm talking about. The merest mention of an Esplanade coffee, and people are back out. Loved having a drink on the patio, hearing conversation and laughter around us. Yes, and again, I'll say, who would have thought we would ever be in a position where we would get to miss that? Absolutely lovely to hear that, Lynn.
Well, what a wonderful thing. I mean, it's almost like not the same thing, of course, but what a prisoner feels like when they finally get their freedom.
Mm.
Because we've all been prisoners in our homes and not being able to enjoy certain things that we've taken for granted. So hopefully we'll all appreciate them a bit more.
But even worse, some would feel like, as a prisoner, you might get out early on good behavior. And in many ways, we've been held back. Some feel because of other people's bad behavior. But there you go.
Well, it's the definition of lockdown in a prison, isn't it? Is when there's a riot or someone behaves, all prisoners have to get locked in their cell. So
yes,
that term is very relevant, isn't it? It's the same for us.
It's too painful to talk about. But look, Villamora was busy yesterday, and we might expect this of the Algarve, mightn't we? That people are sort of socially trigger happy, or coffee-wise trigger happy. Tushtimishtas. I mean, let us know if you were out. What was the first thing you ordered? Obviously, a coffee or a Sagres or a Superbot may have been high in the list of priorities. But what else? Was it a long-awaited Tushtimishta you were looking for? Villamora, I can imagine, was very busy yesterday. And the Golden Triangle, of course, Edmundo. Nice to hear you being kept busy. I love how Portugal is. They're far more flexible with their rules than I find some of their neighbouring countries, says James Campbell. Good morning to you, James, which has been great when many government departments shut, meaning stuff can't be done. I think they've made a bit of an effort, and you can do a lot of more things by email now, which is probably one of the upsides of the pandemic here in Portugal. I think hopefully some of that will stay afterwards. Vinny and Denise, Project Frugal in New Zealand, Bon dia from New Zealand. Can you advise about insulation in Portuguese houses? It seems like they're all built on the ground with bricks and cement with open attic spaces. Correct me if I'm wrong. Not all, but that is a very common building technique. And if you watch Mrs. M's interview with, as many people have done now, which has caused me to look like the Portuguese Pollyanna, come over, everything's just great. That Portugal's fantastic. That's all you need to know. Much more measured and considered interview with expats everywhere from Mrs. M. And she talks about this, which has caused us to consider a webinar about. So thank you, Thomas. I may have overlooked your very kind offer. We will do a special on building and what you need to look out for if you're buying or renovating and so on. But do you want to say anything about this, about damp and mold and ventilation and keeping warm and cool? Go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just things you've got to consider that you wouldn't necessarily be used to, depending where you come from in the world, especially living closer to the coast, because obviously there's a lot more dampness. So you have to be more concerned about, especially if you're renting, then it's the landlord who should be taking care of that for you. But if you're buying, then obviously things like mold and dampness, you just got to be on it. Like anything, right? You have to you have to keep with maintaining something to make sure it's functioning properly. But the biggest shock people have when they come here is they find that most Portuguese properties don't have central heating or air conditioning, and in the winter it does get very cold. Even in Lisbon, which is probably the more milder part of the country in winter. So it is something to bear in mind that you need to be careful of that. Just something to bear in mind.
You will have a learning curve without a doubt, as Michael's saying, and costs. So factoring costs for either warming up, which is very expensive. You use electricity in Portugal from
23% VAT. So energy bills are extremely high compared to what people may be used to, especially from like the US, where energy is very cheap. And the same with running a car, which we can maybe talk about in some detail a bit later.
Yes. So the wine's cheap, and that's another form of keeping warm, of course, or anesthetizing yourself to the lower temperatures. That's how we do it in Portugal. 23%. I think to reiterate that on the EVA tax on top of the energy bills, and they're not, and the price of energy isn't a bargain anyway. Some of the most expensive in Portugal. You need to be aware of that. Certainly with the warming up, and then the cooling side. The air conditioning industry is alive and well here, isn't it? But again, it's another investment that you might not have factored in, and you should when considering building or moving somewhere. Some nice little units actually that double both as heaters and also air conditioners that you can get. Hope that helps. Project Frugal. Ian, morning all. Not used to seeing men wearing shirts. Cold but sunny here. Yes, just single layers here, but and no trousers on. Probably you're always kept guessing with this environment, aren't you? But cold but sunny here in Hertfordshire. Generally, people around here are careful, but still a few idiots not wearing masks in shops. The news from the UK there. Snowing in Birmingham. Wow, it is weird. We do want to see some pictures. I hope that everyone is making this very serious. Yes, Markosh, absolutely. This is I start reading this to find out, Carl, this is too long to read. I'm going to read it anyway, or we're going to go as far as the comments will allow here. In linguistic terms, there is no need to be one or the other. Expat with its ex bit relates to the country of origin, and is an alternative to emigrant or immigrant with its im bit relates to the destination. There is a Latin scholar speaking. So whether temporary or permanent, those of us here for an extended period of both things, as well as immigrants, the issue is really, as per the BBC item, that expat has layers of pejorative. Yes, indeed, it does. That's what people are offended by, I think, isn't it?
Well, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? It's that it's a classist.
Yes, that's right.
I'm going to just say it. Let's stop beating around the bush. That is basically people, because if you're middle class, then you're an expat, and if you're not, then you're an immigrant, which I find extremely offensive as well. So
no question about that. And in the news reporting, and again, the BBC might well be guilty of this itself, mightn't it? They'll talk about the expats over in Spain and Portugal, and they might talk to them about Brexit and stuff. But then if it's people coming into the country, they're immigrants, aren't they? Yeah. And then that is the broadest definition I heard, and I understand it. If people are white, they're expats. If they're brown or black, they are immigrants. Is how it.
The verb is immigration. It's not expat. Well, expatriation as well. It does exist as well, but you know what I mean. Like, immigration is the term we use most of the time.
Yes, it is. And I certainly see myself as an economic migrant as well. There's so much nuance and grey area in it. I have moved for a better quality of life. I realise I'm very privileged and not the economic migrant that the horror stories I've heard firsthand of people going. I heard the most incredible. I was in tears listening to this guy telling his story of being in the back of a flour truck, thinking he was going to die, suffocating flour, going from Syria to the UK, and kind of waking up. Well, at one point he was told by his colleagues in the thing if he got really scared and he was banging against the cab to try and alert the driver. And his colleagues who are in the flour, sort of neck deep in flour with him, were saying, "Look, we'll kill you ourselves if you tell the driver." So it was either going to get killed by his buddies there, who were realizing that if they stopped the truck, they weren't going to get any further. And this is a situation he's in, leaving his family behind, leaving his kid behind, and ending up in Hull. And see, they thought they would end up in Dover or somewhere like that.
Can you imagine waking up in Hull? For no offense to people from Hull, I have been there once. My cousin went to, was it Hull University he went to? I mean, he's got an amazing story about his first.
Hull is something else.
Arriving in Hull, I'll tell you off air because it's a bit too much to share on here at this time in the morning. But it's incredible, like what happens to him within 5 minutes of arriving in Hull.
But this is what happened to him. These guys were, the lorry was, and it was safe to sort of declare themselves as I guess, refugees seeking safety in the UK from war-torn Syria, and they called the local coppers who weren't used to people. I mean, in Dover, they're all over it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where they ended up, no one had ever seen. I don't know what, 4 men covered in flour who are seeking asylum and safety. So they didn't know what to do. It was like, stepping into Heartbeat or something like that, the Heartbeat immigration special. These sort of bobbies thinking, well, I'm not sure what we do here. You want a cup of tea and a full English? whilst we figure out what to do. But an amazing stuff. I'm not in any way undermining or diminishing the horrible experience going on there that underlies, people's offence and upset about this subject. Yeah. So taking it seriously on one level, but the other part of it, if you're an expat but you decide to stay, are you then a pat? Possibly. I'm a Pat. Interested in a pointer to homeschooling. Is this something you would care to speak about? Do you know people who homeschool?
I do. I do. I'm unfamiliar with what the legal requirements, if any, are. If you just, because I know in the UK it's a bit strict, isn't it? If you don't register your children within the schooling system, like people can come and knock on your door and just check that, if you are homeschooling and how you're doing that. So I'm not. I don't think it's as common in Portugal as it is in other countries, just from a cultural point of view. So it's not something I'd be comfortable talking about because I don't know a lot about it. But I do know some people that do it. So presumably there must be a fairly straightforward way to notifying the authorities that you are doing that.
Yeah, I think this is one for the forum, because you're dealing with at best people's personal experience on this matter, who can guide from their own. So on the face of it, people will say no, it's very difficult, or you can't do it in Portugal. But evidently, clearly, people do, and there are different approaches with it. From the people who are terrified of the system and don't tell anyone. And I don't think that's a very good recipe or formula for doing it. And then there are people who register at the local school, but still homeschool. That's one formula I have heard of, where you register with the local school. So your kids are loosely in the education system, but depending on where you are, and of course, this is why it's a very personal thing and a very local thing. Yes. It may be that you have a teaching team there who honor your decision to homeschool and can help you with it. Understanding that's a decision, and that is something I've also heard about in Portugal, as well as affiliation with international homeschooling organizations that will give you a framework for homeschooling, which you can then share with any sort of authority or the local school to say, look, this is the approach we're taking. And I think that's probably what underlies the concern and the law, is that our children who are being homeschooled getting what they need. So if you can demonstrate that, and through an external verification, or by staying in touch with the local school, I think that's doable. And I have heard of that, Mike. So there's another possibility for you. And of course, there are fewer people who want to homeschool now since the pandemic, I understand, than before. Or with so many people having a taste of, their romantic notions of homeschooling have been tested, and they've decided to send their kids to school after all. Hello from Geneva, from Paolo Samois. Good morning, Paolo. The doc, Mike, at that age, this is to Mike Campion, I think, they will learn Portuguese easily and get help. Marinha Grande has a private international school follow. There you go. There's a selection or a particular pick for you there. Think about Marinha Grande and you'll be in the lovely part of central Portugal that is Leiria, where the doc is, who I'm sure will be able to tell you more and speak to you more about the attractions of that part of the country. Great place to live. Does seem a bit strange, people still wearing masks, walking around in the streets, but more than happy to sit on a balcony with other people, no problem. Funnier world, yes. As I think we've got, or nearing some sort of conclusion here, things aren't adding up quite, are they? We're getting the legacy of like, do this, do this, do this. And then when you put them all together at this late stage, it's like, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense anymore. I think that's where we're at, really, isn't it? But point taken and well made there, Gary. Bon dia from New York City, from Mark. How are you, Mark? What's life like in New York City? What a wonderful crowd, eh? Bon dia alegria from Olga. How are you this morning, Olga? Louise is here as well. Bon dia from the Silver Coast. A bit late today. Hope everyone is well. Louise normally has a question for us. This, of course, Wednesday. Ask anything about Portugal Day. Let me put that more appropriate ticker tape on the bottom there. Yes, seriously. Ask anything about Portugal. Here we have Michael Heron, recent winner of the heats, where he was victorious over Alentejo and Northern Portugal, and now faces Jerry, who represents Central Portugal. So it's Lisbon and Tejo Valley versus Central Portugal later on this month. Lots of comments. Let's get through these. Good morning. I'm a local Portuguese from Algarve. I would like to ask a question. When is the UK government letting the tourists travel back again, or any preview regarding that? Michael, you keep your eye on this. What do you think?
I mean, I don't want to get too political, but I don't think you can take at face value what our government in the UK says about anything. So they may tell you one thing and then change their mind about it, because they were sort of filtering through the media to encourage people not to have a summer holiday this year. And then all of a sudden they were saying, well, from this date. So I wouldn't take too much notice of it, to be honest. I would imagine that there'll be agreements in place that from probably May, they're going to have to allow tourists from the UK to travel freely to Portugal, because otherwise the economy isn't going to survive.
Yes, indeed.
It's going to have to be allowed to happen. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I just don't trust communication, and it's not always their fault because things can change so rapidly.
Yes.
So I think it's difficult for them to give any kind of consensus on that.
That's a balanced view, veiling very slightly your appreciation, and I'll use that word loosely, of Boris and his leadership. As much as Edmundo, so sorry we can't be more helpful than that, but as much as he would like to think of himself as a Churchillian leader, he's not that, is he? They do slide things out, via press release or leak to see how the government are going to, the public are going to respond, and then backtrack and stuff. And Boris is just
when he first came to power, I remember talking to a few people because he was popular at the time because he was who he is, and some people like that, respect. But the consensus was, as soon as he has some kind of prime ministerial crisis, we'll realise just how incompetent he is.
Yeah,
and you can trace this back to when he was mayor of London. I think when the riots happened in 2011, he was on holiday in Canada at the time, and took too long to respond and actually come back to London to deal with everything. And it's been the same with COVID. And you look at countries that have been affected the most. Again, I don't want to get too political, but it's a bit like you look at successful businesses, if you can compare them to governments, and it's all about leadership. So if you look at countries like Brazil, the US, I mean, Europe has been interesting because while strategy has differed quite a lot between countries, we're all pretty much in the same situation, which I find quite fascinating, which is another topic for another time. But obviously other countries like Brazil and the US have had way more deaths per human than in Europe. So it shows that leadership counts. And yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, it's been quite shocking.
Test of leadership. It is sorting the men from the boys and the women from the girls. This pandemic of any political leader, is a massive test for them. A webcam would be a great idea. I would like to be giving you a rest from my physicog every now and then with a nice view of the vineyards. Wouldn't that be great? I now identify as a gringo. That's the sort of comment that got you banned from Facebook, I suspect, Gary. Yeah. Pontia from Lisboa, the number spiked up yesterday. So that's quite a concern, says Weave the story. So yeah, and this is the news that's coming from France, isn't it? These spikes and further waves. Oh, please no. Hola, bon dia. Out early this morning, so just sitting down for the second coffee of the morning. How lovely, Paul and Louise. Alex, Scott, I've spent a day trying to find Portuguese private schools, and it's hard. Yeah, get on the forum, seriously. People power.
Yeah. Don't try and find this stuff by yourself if you've got people that can help you.
Yeah, is there a website with a list of Portuguese private schools, or just a tip how to search for Portuguese private one? That will be my tip to you, Alex. Go to our website, expatsportugal.com, and ask the question there. And people will pick up on the subject that you've put in there and respond, I'm sure. I am with Gary on the mask business, says Antonio. Oh, what the how you do and you don't. And, I mean, it is difficult to drink coffee and eat and have soup with a mask on, obviously, but don't you? And I do it myself. You're walking towards a cafe with your mask on, and you're thinking, any minute now. It's almost like how I remember smoking. That moment when you light up. Taking the mask off, demasking is a small moment of ecstasy as well at the moment, I would say. Alex, I spent about a week looking for private schools. Okay, but the doc is a good person to talk to then, for sure. Same, but I thought I would say a day. Yeah, Okay, so this is taking a long time, but you've got our tip there. I don't wear a mask on the street because there are a few people around. Yeah, and I think it's a matter of using your intelligence, isn't it? It's like if you're near people and you don't want to freak them out and you want to, observe that social conversation and agreement, put it on near people. It's probably the easiest and best thing. And yeah, of course, if there's no one else around, it's a bit like people who drive. I know people who drive in masks, if they're on their own, get a hard time. And they forget sometimes, don't they? It's easier sometimes to leave it on and you forget. But yeah, if you're on your own, you probably don't need to protect yourself using a mask from yourself. I don't think anyway. And as a lot of people say at the moment, I'm no epidemiologist. We have a trip booked for May the 2nd, says Tamara, but we'll not know if we have to change it due to a 14-day quarantine. No point in going for that. Yeah. What do you think about the deconfinement plan? Well, what's your view on how the plan is working and the shape of it? Because May the 3rd will be the next big date, won't it? In this, if all goes according to plan in this second part of it, what do you think, Michael?
It's a difficult one. I think certain decisions were made in Portugal that I respect in terms of sex. So, for example, when you compare it to the UK, in Portugal, they opened, barbers and hairdressers. One of the first things they opened before anything else, because it's considered as, an essential thing. We're all like hippies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. It was quite interesting to see some of the haircuts being bandied about. So look, I think allowing nurseries and young children to go back to school as quickly as possible, that was really important, because I'm not sure parents like me can relate to that. When you've got small children at home, it is really, not that it's not demanding with older children, but with small children in particular, it's very demanding to try and work from home and look after them. So I think that decision was good. I know in the UK they made that decision early as well. But then just the reopening of certain, I guess we can only compare it to other countries where they seem to have nailed it, like New Zealand. Obviously, it's slightly easier for them because they're more isolated. But what I admire about the New Zealanders is when they have had, and you can't even call it a spike because it's just like a few cases, they put everyone into lockdown, but it's a very short lockdown, and then everyone's allowed to go back and live completely normally again, which I know wouldn't work in countries in Europe. But I just fear that we're making the same mistakes repeatedly with trying to ease things too quickly, and it's a bit like, I don't know, can't think of a good analogy for that. Okay, it's a bit like, if you haven't been running for a while,
yes,
you're meant to ease back into it, and it's a bit like trying to run a marathon if you haven't been training for it.
Yes,
there's going to be consequences of that. So that's my fear. My fear is that we even though people's mental health and everything like this, it's really something that, and the economy, obviously, the what governments are more worried about. Let's not kid ourselves. But that's my fear. My fear is that we lift these restrictions too quickly, and then we end up having to go back.
That analogy is working for me. The running thing, I think, being unfit and running a marathon are incompatible, I think is what you're saying. And I think also trying to go back to the old normal from where we are is incompatible. And I think that there might be a model in Europe at some stage where we accept that we're never going back to normal and we adjust on that basis, or we are going back to normal when we face the consequences of that. And I'm not saying that's going to be pretty or good. I'm just saying that's probably the decision that will need to be made. And it's got to be either one of those, isn't it? Because you can't have both. You can't go back to normal and not expect, now that we've got a highly infectious virus, to be causing chaos. So we adjust the endpoint, i.e., to use your analogy, we only go for a walk instead of a marathon, or we train for something, and we train for something more realistic, or we face the consequences. We run that marathon anyway, and people do run marathons when they're unfit, and we face the consequences of that. But we know what we're getting into, and that will be more like instead of the current model, which we're struggling with, that would be more like the Barrington Declaration stuff, wouldn't it? Well, okay, You want to go back to normal, we're going back to normal, but it's going to mean this, this, and this. It's going to mean, seriously protecting the vulnerable, putting the most healthy out back into society. But there will be consequences for that. But we can't have both. I think we're trying to do both things, and that's the problem. That's why it's not working. That's why we have 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 2 steps forward, 3 steps back at the moment. So I think we need to adjust either one or the other.
You make a really valid point. And I think that's the part that maybe people are struggling with the most is assuming that we are going to go back to how things were before. And it's not going to happen. I'll never forget, there was a guy being interviewed by one of the news channels right when the pandemic first broke, and he was in Singapore, and they were obviously dealing with it, or the Times seemed to be dealing with it quite well. And he was very, very candid about it. He said, look, this is going to be at least 2 years, and there are 2 things that need to happen. We need to have testing widely available, and we need a vaccine. And I think, the problem is I still don't see, because, so this is the interesting thing that happened. I don't know if you read about the concert in Barcelona that took place. I'd be interested to actually if anyone knows about the data for that. So there was a concert in Barcelona, 5,000 people went. Obviously the tickets sold out really quickly, but you had to have a PCP test before going. And I think there were only 3 or 4 people that were denied entrance because they had COVID. And then what they've done subsequently is track everyone to see if anyone had got infected subsequently and passed it on. And if not, then that's a model that I think we just have to get used to. It's a bit like car insurance, isn't it? You reward people for driving safely, and if not, you get penalized. So if you're not willing to be compliant, then you'll be denied certain rights which were basic human rights before. So that sounds draconian, but I'm all for that. I think reward people that comply, and those that don't allow them to do certain things. Good luck enforcing that, but that's the only way to. It's the carrot and the stick, right?
Well, I do like tracking these events if people are willing to be tracked. And you would think in the vast populations of Europe, you would be able to get a band and a crowd together who would happily form an experiment, and then another band and another crowd who might be the placebo or the double-blind trial. Why aren't we doing social experiments of that kind with people who want to take part in them? I don't understand that. Maybe we are now. I don't know. But there you go. That's a very long-winded answer to what we think about the deconfinement plan. What we do know about it is that we are in the second part of it now. We're coming out of the most limited of limitations and restrictions. We have kids returning to school. We have external service. We have certain shops open, external service in hospitality places, and then another lift off of stuff around May the 3rd. But that will depend on what the numbers are looking like in the period up to May the 3rd, tomorrow there. So you in many ways, obviously, and I'm sure you're deducing this from yourself, your guess is as good as ours, because it will depend on what the data is. As to what will happen, and then whether or not you'll be facing a 14-day quarantine. Sorry, can't be more helpful than that. Antonia, I got reprimanded for not wearing a mask on the street while social distancing. I understand that, Antonia, and I just think it's that's a reflection of the fear people feel at the moment, isn't it? And we're going to sadly face that. Maria, hola, started cloudy down the road in Leria, but now sunny an hour later. King Edward. Perhaps. What was that about? We haven't been talking about potatoes. Is that a reference to the royal family and their position on expats and immigrants? I wonder. Notable immigrants themselves, the British royal family. But let's not go down that road. When you say tomorrow, it's. I do beg your pardon. I see. When I say tomorrow, I thought I was mispronouncing your name, but beg your pardon. That must be difficult if I keep shouting out tomorrow and you look round every time. Here's a question for Ask Anything About Portugal. Crowd wisdom needed. Where can I buy a high quality bed and orthopedic mattress equivalent to the V-Spring or Vice-Spring in the UK in terms of comfort? Anywhere near Caldas de Rainha, or do I need to go to Lisboa? Let's leave that hanging there, that crowd wisdom request there. I think someone is going to come up with an answer to that. It's one of the essentials, isn't it? Do you know the answer to that? No, okay. Jom is a great shop. JOM, the green logo, the white writing. You drive past them, do a great range of orthopedic mattresses. Prepare for expense, though, I would say. Furniture seems to be a lot more expensive. Even Portuguese IKEA is more expensive than other places. It's probably the 23% EVA. Holland has a very welcoming higher education for Europeans. Nearly all the classes in the uni are English. Yearly fees very economical. Maxine making the case there, and it's flat, so the students bike to uni. Can't say that in Lisbon and Coimbra, can you? Pete's here. We opened our village social club yesterday. Oh, wonderful. And had a few of the locals come for a coffee in the dappled sun under the trees. Looking forward to an al fresco communal lunch in a few weeks using the new barbecue pit there. Always a lovely vignette and cameo from Central Portugal. Thank you so much for that. I hope the Portuguese Pollyanna sticks. Oh, yeah, don't worry, Antonio. I haven't. My missus made me look really bad, but I still, Pollyannas are Pollyannas. We keep going nonetheless. Because I've got, because I'm positive about it. I'm positive that people will forget. The webinar is a must. I can't wait. Okay, so that's about building. We will do that one then. Newer houses are built away from the ground, but insulation is still not where it should be, says Ludwig Dingledine there. Going back some way in our conversation there. Jom is all over the country and online, Kate, for that. Project Frugal, what are you seeking to do, says Thomas? Is it about an existing property, or are you looking to buy, build, restore? Drop us a line via Facebook, Ria Ribbit. Anyway, you see the link there. Get in touch with Thomas. He knows what he's talking about. Maria Costa, for me, coming from the USA, the property tax we pay for our house almost covers our yearly cost of living. It's just split in different ways here. Thank you for that, Maria. Angela Dalton, in Argonne, we've had -10 in the morning and 35 degrees by 1 p.m. And that is an interesting comment, because how do you build a house to cope with that variation? That's what we're dealing with here. It's the variation, isn't it? But that is incredible, isn't it? Looking like an Eskimo in the morning and then a Hawaiian by lunchtime.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out that if you can afford it, a lot of new builds have solar panel roofs, which aren't as expensive as they used to be. And obviously we get a lot of sunlight in Portugal. So that is a very viable solution for a lot of people in terms of covering your costs of electricity. But yeah, the challenge of dealing with -10 in the morning and 35 at 1 p.m. I mean, that sounds just torture to me.
Yeah, or stay in bed till midday would be my simple answer to that. This takes us back to the caravan days that some people might remember, caravan holidays. Worst thing you can use in winter is a Calagas heater, because it sends the humidity through the roof, literally, and it just condenses on cooler surfaces and turns it into mold, just like the old caravans, eh? Thank you for that, Gary. Another tip there. Yes, Michael, classist, absolutely. An immigrant is a poor expat. Yes, that's another way of looking at it. Tamara, in France, we are strangers. But the great thing about the French, of course, is they can make that sound sexy, can't they? Come here, my little stranger. Is that? No. Okay, bit creepy. Sorry. Any talk of implementing vaccine passports for US travelers? I'm trying to travel. To look, I've never done that. To be fair, I would never do that.
I was hello, but with a bit more elegance. That was beautiful.
It was a bit sort of hello mixed with Clouseau, I think. I hope. Vaccine passports for US travelers. A French person just wouldn't know what I was saying there, would they? I'm trying to travel to look at GV investments, but the consulate is still saying they might turn me back. Yeah, this is a problem, Mark. Just, the whole thing. I mean, it's one thing to be talking about movement in the EU, but it's absolute ban, isn't there? And no sign, no light at the end of the tunnel for Americans. Again, don't know what to tell you there. For example, but we will be the first, if there is news, we will be the first to be shouting it from the rooftops. I promise you that. Gemini, for example, British national working in Spain or Portugal is commonly referred to as an expatriate, whereas a Spanish or Portuguese national working in Britain is referred to as an immigrant, thus indicating Anglocentrism. Another angle on this. An older
that whole week we're about to go down. We might have to bail before that happens.
An older usage of the word expatriate referred to an exile compared to immigrant. Thank you, Gemini. Yes, talking about, are you all right for up to 5:30 here? I didn't ask.
No problem.
But not if we keep talking about that. Look, meaning of the word. I got banned for I think you'd be surprised. So gringo, okay, you know, the G word. I see that with a slightly awkward connotation, but yes, we should look these things up and talk about them. About the BBC, says Rena, you mentioned about expats around the immigrants. Very true. I agree with Michael about middle class people tend to call themselves expats and others might be immigrants. Yep. Antonio F, always great comments from Antonio. It's being discussed, but no decisions yet about Americans and the vaccine passport here. I agree with Michael's point about sending kids to Portuguese private or public if one tends to stay long term, says Rena. We had 2 virtual meetings with Portuguese private schools in Cascais and Sintra. So excellent. On the term expat, at one time, didn't it refer to someone who was relocated by a foreign multinational company? Yes. Now it seems to generally apply to retirees. And that's a change in the world. I mean, there are still people being exported around the place, you know, on a corporate level, but many more people doing it themselves. The world has changed since that happened, isn't it? You know, like the expats sat in Raffles Hotel in Singapore, and you know, and colonies and so on. The world has changed. We still use the word, but the world has changed. And I'm sure for most people, no offense is meant by it. In Dover, have many clandestines from Romania and Bulgaria or something like that. Not sure. Oh, I see. Yes, people trying to find a new home in the UK. I'll put it like that for the time being, because that's another can of worms we could address perhaps another time. I don't understand the homeschooling thing. Kids should be together, sharing experiences, learning and playing, says Paolo. Yes, well, I guess you could be making a lockdown comment at the same time there. Thanks for the good info thus far. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. That little affirmation is very helpful to us. Bon dia para todos from John Smith. Good morning, John. Another one of the Ask Our Expats team there at expatsportugal.com. Some sites in Portuguese, of course, which may help with Portuguese private schools. Yep. And you'll brush up your Portuguese at the same time there, Mike. Paolo, parents need time away from their kids and vice versa. I can think of nothing more horrifying than homeschooling for both sides, says the doc, agreeing there. Any homeschoolers who would like to address the old... I mean, the thing about socialization for kids who are homeschooled, I think, is as long-standing a conversation as the expat and immigrant thing. It runs and runs. Morning, guys. I read that the Portuguese government said borders are open from May the 17th to UK. Isn't that right? Could be.
That's why I didn't want to say anything when the previous person asked me, because, yeah, that is the official date. But, I mean, take it with a bucket of salt would be my advice. Because
the Portuguese sea salt from Aveiro, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
The bucket of thought warning there from Michael, a good shout. Yes, so yeah, that may well be the proffered deadline or timeline. But yes, these things, as we know from our own experience of the last year, can change and change suddenly. And then all the consequences that issue forth from that. There seems to be no single source listing such schools. Well, there's a job for us, Thomas. I think Expats Portugal need to get on that, and I'm sure we will. The doc, I totally agree. There's Paolo and the doc are making the case for sending kids to school. Nobody will come with the current quarantine restrictions, says Gary. Nobody will come with the in here. I'm not sure what you mean, but yes, it's not looking good for tourism.
You have to self-isolate for 14 days. You're not going to come on holiday. I think that's
indeed. Yes, okay. Yeah, it's not much of a holiday, is it? 17th of May is a UK government aspirational date for opening travel, not a Portuguese one. Thank you. That's, yes, crowd wisdom, as Kate referred to it, putting the pieces together here. What companies do you recommend for finding an apartment in Lisbon? Spot a Home, I would look at on our business directory, Tamara. The new company that is Spot a Home can be helpful with that, and the leases they give are useful for visas as well. So that's quite a useful find. We are using Idylista and have heard of uni places and living. I think there are 3 eyes. Okay, just to make them stand out in the market. But Spot a Home, I would certainly have a look at. It's one of our perks in the business directory. Yeah, I think always with finding an apartment, it's making a Portuguese best friend. Word of mouth, getting to know people. Would you agree, Michael? It's all very well looking at the sites, but knowing people opens up an entirely different ecosystem.
Absolutely, and it's a bit like there's like a hidden real estate market as well, and this is more common in other countries in Europe. Like in Spain, for example, people don't tend to use real estate agents to buy or rent property. In Portugal, you need to do it, but it's worth talking to people locally, because they may know of properties that are available, or they'll be able to recommend what a fair price is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always good to speak with people. But websites like that are fantastic because you get access to the data in real time.
Yep. And taxi man, Edmundo, ask a taxi driver or a hairdresser. Go get a haircut, jump in a cab, start asking questions of the locals. No better connection than with taxi drivers. Who's thanking us there? That particular man, Edmundo. Any potential major political ramifications in Portugal based on the handling of COVID? Of course, the ballot box will be the revenge point or the reward point, won't it? And what's your view on that, Michael? It looks like it's been handled fairly well, but people use the ballot box, don't they, if they're in any way unhappy and want to wreak revenge?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think the support for Costa and his government is still there. It's been a very stable government. They've made, on the whole, good decisions. The economy's grown. Obviously, what happened with COVID was kind of unprecedented. So, obviously, any opposition can use any mistakes they've made as leverage, which will no doubt be the political strategy across the world for opposition parties and presidents, depending on the political system in each country. But I mean, I think the support is still. This is I think something that doesn't get talked about enough. One of the benefits of for me having lived in Portugal now for 7 years is that there's been a stable government the whole time, which hasn't been the case in a lot of other countries. So that has impacted on a lot of things. Whether you agree or not with some of the decisions that have been made, we can't argue with the fact that it has been stable. So
true.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We will, and it will be a stick with which governments are beaten all over the world, won't it? They have their respective handling of COVID. It will be telling times at the ballot box. Milda, can you talk about stamp duty? Is it true that stamp duty in Spain is 10%, but in Portugal only 1%? I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know what Portuguese property?
I will tell you that the taxes are high in Portugal when you buy a property, so you do have to factor in. I've got a feeling I'm trying to remember when I bought a property, how much we paid on it. But
I can't recall it. I'm sorry to say.
It's about 10. All the costs you have to factor about 10% above the price you pay. So if you buy a property,
useful price,
300,000 euros, let's say, then it's going to end up costing you about 330.
That's
yeah.
And Milda, go to probably the most popular webinar video we've got on our YouTube channel, which is finding a property in Portugal, where Peter von Nuenen talks about that, and other correspondents in our webinars do. Daniel Reyes of Reyes Pelicano as well. Check out the webinars that we've put up. Also, I keep hearing different opinions about whether Tabua and Coimbra are in central Portugal or north Portugal. Which is it, please? Coimbra, without a doubt, the capital of central. I say without a doubt. These things are always controversial, aren't they? But central Portugal, Coimbra. Tabua, I would say central Portugal. You're not really getting into northern Portugal until you get to the Porto latitude. I would say there. Would you agree, Michael?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you think about when you drive from Lisbon to Porto, like Coimbra is almost halfway. So
yeah,
it's central.
Yes, indeed. Okay, Ian, there's a group of homeschool children that have athletics coaching at our track. They love being together, but it's only an hour a week. Thank you, Ian. €200 fine. Just need to find the right cop. Okay. I can't read that out, Edmundo. I can by saying we can't necessarily recommend this, but here's an interesting view from Edmundo. Just need to find the right cop with worry about the paper bureaucracy. Oh, I can't believe that happens here. Bon dia, I love washing my face after getting in and taking my mask off. Bliss. I know, Pamela. For me, it's just like kicking off the heels and taking my bra off. It is just such a relief at the end of a busy day, honestly. Antonio F., the Doc Thompson and Tabua as well. Yeah, and Tabua definitely central Portugal. Then we're coming to that conclusion. The UK government hasn't made a decision on travel, says Kate. The UK scientific advisors are saying that if foreign travel is allowed, there's likely to be another wave of COVID and more variants in the news. Just in from Kate there. Thank you for that, Kate. Mark Rigby. Unfortunately, a third wave is sweeping across Europe. Hasn't reached Portugal yet. I thought we'd already had it in January. It makes opening up to tourism a balance of risks. Thomas, there is a new mask spray I saw at Correios at the post office. It disinfects and freshens. Entrepreneurs will always take advantage of disruption in society, and there's an example for you: a new mask spray. Good heavens. Antonio, a look at Israel. All vaccinated people are allowed to carry on. The rest are allowed to stay at home. A complicated issue. You're not kidding. That's true, Kathleen. 17th of May is what Boris Johnson said he hoped for. Yes, there's strong leadership. But these things have often changed. The data does not figure in Portuguese timelines. Thank you, Thomas. Normal depends on one simple thing, the health services capability of response, says Nuno Pinheiro. Good morning, Nuno. When they are over capacity, we stop. That has been a reliable marker, has it not? And the figures are good in that respect. Yeah, good point. Last minute info. Restaurants concerned about non-compliance by people who do not use the mask on the terraces. They are concerned about people who do not use the mask on the terraces. Okay. According to Westminster insiders, Boris makes decisions based on the last person that spoke with him. Yeah. So it depends who is getting in the room at any given time. Yes, we can believe that from the picture.
Yeah. I can believe 100%. I can believe that.
It was latched onto by the UK press. I know of people who have literally booked flights for the 17th. What an awful picture, eh? And what a terrible situation in which you want to make tangible decisions in your personal life. And it's so sort of, there is so much vacillation at the top. There is a mattress shop called Dormi Bang. Very good range, not cheap though. There you go, from Pam in Alcobaster, another member of our Ask Our Expats team, hireable by the hour, to tell you all the wonderful things and the things you should look out for when moving to Portugal. Lots of places in our area, Santarém, Torres Novas, have independent mattress sellers. Going a bit back in the conversation for Kate's benefit here, which sell the main Portuguese brands, many of which are made around here. Another great Portuguese export, and can be ordered in bespoke in terms of size and materials, very cost effectively. So you can have a cork mattress. I suspect from there. I saw on Portuguese. That could be a bit uncomfortable, saying it was their government saying that. Yeah, a confusion around the 17th. How are they testing for COVID in Portugal? Asks Denise. It's not the PSV, public service vehicle test. PCR is what we're using, right? It's not gone into.
I believe they're now available to buy in pharmacies quite easily. I think that was a game changer in Lisbon, certainly. I don't know about the rest of the country. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the only way that we're going to keep this thing under control is people, and obviously that data then needs to be shared, providing it's GDPR.
DG likes my idea. Great idea for a double-blind concert. I mean, if big groups of people take this on, and they're happy to be in these experiments, why aren't we doing that? That went completely wrong. I think that's that comment that you made there, being a Dutch bat international. Tell us what you meant to say, Magdalena. Well, at least they don't use the word they use here. We are aliens. I mean, that's a word in America as well, isn't it? Savage. Stephen Wells, borders are dependent on both UK and Portugal. Portugal may let people in, but UK has to let people back too. Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? That's why it's so much more complicated.
That's why you can't rely, because what one side says doesn't mean the other side will, will comply with. So you've got to then weigh up.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you for your comment, Mark, about the word expat coming from the colonial days. Magdalena, being a Dutch, here we go. This is what she meant to say. Being a Dutch national, having lived abroad for many years and now back in a small village in the Netherlands near Maastricht, Mike and I are still considered outsiders even after 7 years. What we would give to level up to get expat status. It's interesting, isn't it? Wherever you go in the world. I mean, it can take generations, let's face it. But that's not to say you don't get treated well. It's that last bit, isn't it, where you're truly accepted. And I suspect it can be a generational matter. You really have to make your influence and your family's influence felt in an area to be truly known.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. I think, if you're, it's a subjective thing, but if you're willing to integrate into your local community, then your local community will see you as one of them. Yeah. Whereas if you decide to have, and again, nothing wrong with it, depending on how long you're planning to come to a new country, but if you decide to live that in a bubble existence where you and your family are just, with other expats, again, nothing wrong with that either. So you're going to be labelled as that. So it just depends on your choice of how you want to live.
And there will always be individuals. We're individuals making up communities, despite what notable politicians may have said in the past. And there may always be that bloke down the cafe or the pub or whatever who will never accept you, and that's his right to do that. It's just, that's life, isn't it? But then again, collectively you might get acceptance. It's all about human psychology and us funny human beings. I think. Is it legal to go for a picnic now? I don't actually know the answer to that. I'll put my hands up and say I am actually confused, because some of the restrictions and how it's being opened up do seem contradictory, because you can go to an Esplanade cafe, but can you do that at certain times of the week in a different municipality? There are there's a very complex Venn diagram of what you can and can't do. I honestly don't know the answer to that, Gary. Do you, Michael?
No.
Somebody else might. I think expats, similar to the Irish concept of diaspora, basically people in other countries for other reasons and actually wanting to integrate and live there, I think. Thank you, James. Any thoughts on buying a home? Would waiting be advantageous? Very interesting. I know Michael will have something to say about this and the buoyancy of the Portuguese property market in our last 10 minutes now. There isn't a let up in property prices. They're staying high. People are buying property over Zoom, aren't they, at the moment, Michael?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is the rental market has gone down quite considerably. So it is worth considering renting initially, especially if you're moving here. You'll get a lease for 12 months. Usually that's how it works. Yeah. And then by then, I think property prices will go down purely because, and again, it's just quite an upsetting thing to talk about, but the support that through government backing that the banks have been giving in terms of relief on people's mortgages, they're not having to pay as much interest. That will probably end in September. So I think that is when you'll see, unfortunately, people defaulting or selling. So yeah, my advice would be to wait if you can. Obviously, if you can't, then not. But I would always say the same thing. If you're moving to a new country, unless you need a golden visa, which I know is different, but if you can rent for the first year, especially to decide where you want to live as well, because once you buy, that's it, right? You've made that decision, and the process to buy and sell a house or an apartment in Portugal, like anywhere, it's not a straightforward transaction. So I think renting is good because it's gone down about 25% on average, and I think the real estate market will go down in value. But I think we spoke about this last time, Carl. It is astonishing how resilient it's been, and it's continued to go up despite the times we live in, which is a wonderful advocate for Portugal. So we can't be too disconcerted about that. But yeah, I think it will start to go down September, October. If the government doesn't extend that aid, which I don't think they'll be able to, because they're going to run out of money if not.
Okay, well said. Wait for the results of that stable government, says Portuguese Joel. Indeed, yeah. Read Portuguese tourism. I'll be emailing you soon, Michael, and copying you, Carl, for info about sustainable tourism organisations, as discussed last time. Well up for that, Doreen. And you know me, I want to encourage people to come and tour Portugal for a month. I think the 3 day, this is the new normal thing. I just think this city break business is being made very difficult, and it's best to look longer term. Come touring for a longer term rather than your 3 day in Lisbon and out of Porto, taking in Coimbra on the way. So we'll gladly receive that and talk to you about that.
It's not long enough. There's so much of this beautiful country to see. You need to come for longer.
Okay, Paolo, having a dig at me from yesterday. Nice to have a non-biased political commentator. All right, Paolo. All right, I am. In fact, Miguel yesterday is going to help me find somebody speaking from the other side of the chamber, metaphorically, I think, Paolo. So yeah, I hear you, Antonio. Prices went down a little bit. When the economy reopens, rent and sale prices will go to normal values. Is Antonio's punt on that? I'm not sure I agree with you, Antonio, but we'll see, won't we? We never know with these things, but we'll see. Thank you from Milda. Homeschoolers usually have quite big networks that they interact with, camps and activities outside the home, etc. And of course, with this thing about socialization at school, your kids might be socializing with people you don't want them to socialize with. Not all socialization is good socialization, let's face it, as we know as adults. Porto is too much to the south to be considered northern. So there you go. North is proper Braga, Bragança, and up there, Trás-os-Montes. That's the true north of Portugal, up there in the Gerês National Park. Agreed. Speaking from Italia, a stable government. I'm sorry, Bella, but Italy and stable government, those those phrases don't go in the same sentence, do they?
Whoa. Don't go there.
Speaking for Italy, a stable government would be nice, whether you agree with the decision they make. Yes, okay, so she's speaking from Italian experience there. Instability leads to the mess that we're currently experiencing. Yeah, I mean, why is it so hard in Italy to have a stable government? I think you have to go back centuries, don't you, for stable government in Italy? Paolo, absolutely, very much south of Braga, hilarious. Stephen Wells, what is the process for getting residency from the UK these days? You're looking at a D7 or some of the others, but most likely the D7. What extra requirements do UK citizens now have to meet and get past the 90 limit? Yes, you must apply for beyond tourism. You must go for the D7 and talk to our partners, EI Migration. Talk to the wonderful Gilles there, Stephen. As we go into the last 5 minutes, that's the best I can give you right now, because I want to make sure everyone gets a shout. Michael can give us anything else he wants to say today. We're going to talk about car matriculation. We did get around to it. 30 kilometers plus or minus, not that far off. With Porto. To all expats need local information around the Golden Triangle. Can't always connect Catch Me transfers through Facebook. So if you're flying into the Algarve, Edmundo is your man. He'll pick you up and he'll show you a good time. Tell you all the best places to go down there. Kate, tax when buying property. Here we go. Portugal is based on the price of the house over 273,000. It's 8% and called IMT. I think stamp duty comes on top of IMT, and it is just under 1%. So whilst that sounds good, at 1%, there are other costs which Michael alluded to. A non-Portugal question: what streaming software do you use? StreamYard. Proud to use StreamYard, Stephen. Tips on finding apartments for those who don't speak Portuguese. Yes, Spot a Home and Airbnb still good to go to make sure you're getting a good deal. To make sure you're getting a good deal, have a Portuguese virtual assistant, often a hireable.
Do your own research, right?
Do your own research as well. But yeah, if you get a Portuguese best friend or hire a virtual assistant for a few hours, you may well slash the prices through that person. Any news about Portugal opening up to tourists yet? Sorry, Hank, nothing yet. Certainly for you Americans, EU announced they think they will have herd immunity by the end of June. Is he joking there? Kate, thanks everyone.
We need everything. No.
Sorry.
Wow.
No, okay. Thanks everyone for the bed buying recommendations. You see, I knew we would come up with something with that. Next week, I'll be asking for crowd wisdom on where to buy a great sofa for a modern architecture house. She's getting ready. She's priming us already for her question. Jean, I think they have a really good collection of sofas again. So try Jean, but you might want something a bit more luxurious. Bon dia from Dubai from Mohammed Wahab this morning. Good morning to you, Mohammed. Great to have your company. Antonio will definitely wait. Muito obrigada. De nada. Especially the younger ones. In what regard? So people are talking to each other now about all manner of cans of worms that we've opened this morning. James Campbell. Theresa May in the UK was the most stable government I have ever witnessed. Yes, she was a bit of a vacillator as well, wasn't she? As younger employees all had English in school. I'm not sure. That's going off on a thread there separately in the comments, I think. Esplanadas. Businessmen have their hearts in their hands because they are unable to impose the use of the mask. Okay, that is a very difficult thing to be policing, isn't it? Well, the government has given that job to the establishments, and I feel their pain. I really do. A really awkward situation. Lol, guys, pie in the sky. That yes, Hank was winding us up, not like Hank at all. And Kate, house prices have been very resilient everywhere in the developed world, particularly in places considered desirable. See The Economist magazine this week. Have you got an article in there, Kate? I wonder. But yes, property price resilience, possibly to be expected in this first part of the pandemic. But I'm with Michael on this. I think we're in for some tricky, difficult, probably awful economic times, and those property values will drop, I suspect. Last question we're taking from the floor before Michael has his last word, as is his privilege as our regular guest here on Ask Anything About Portugal. Who can you recommend as a reputable company to retire in Portugal? EI. And I'll find you the link for that, Zanderman, while Michael is having his final say here. Michael, was there anything we've missed or anything you wanted to add this morning?
Well, no, it's just, I guess, just to bring up the topic of car importation. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's a very wide subject, but just to kind of emphasize that anyone that is relocating to Portugal, if possible, should consider bringing their car with them, because the car market in Portugal, typically you're going to be paying about 40% more for the same vehicle that you'd have bought in your home country. Obviously, not including places like Singapore, where cars are very expensive as well. But it is quite shocking how expensive it is to buy a car in Portugal and run it, because of VAT being 23%. So petrol is a lot more expensive. So I would urge people to do research, find an expert who can take care of everything. And there's different criteria that has to be met. But the rule of thumb is, as long as you've owned the vehicle for more than 12 months in your home country before you move, then generally speaking, you're good to go. And you're able to drive your car with your foreign number plates whilst you're waiting for that process to be completed when you arrive in Portugal. And you have 6 months, I think, to do that before your car could get impounded, providing it's insured. So that was all I wanted to say, really, but just bear it in mind. What I would urge on the side of caution is, if you're coming from the UK or South Africa, or a country which has right-hand drive, be wary, because it's not particularly recommendable to drive right-hand drive on the left, as I discovered when I brought my Jeep over 7 years ago and quickly got rid of it, because there are a number of embarrassing situations you'll get into where you need to be on the left-hand side. For example, going through a peage.
Oh, yes, of course. You need a co-pilot, don't you, for that sort of thing?
Co-pilot, exactly. Or a drive-through, or underground parking, and trying to overtake a single carriageway. So all these things.
Yes, indeed. Not so attractive for the Brits then. Incredible. And more attractive for those already in Europe, and possibly Americans, depending on how wealthy you are and how attached you are to your car. These last few questions, sorry guys, we haven't got time for them. I don't want to leave you hanging, but go to the forum if you're seeking satisfaction and fulfillment with your inquiries this morning. A sudden surge of questions coming in. So sorry, we got to go. And we will be back tomorrow with Louise, author Louise, tomorrow, having another lovely conversation here on Good Morning Portugal. Just remains for me to say thank you very much, Michael Heron. We'll see you next month. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. See you next month, Carl.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.